Can you tell me where?
Fala pessoal, eu sou Kelvin Araújo, estamos aqui em mais um vídeo do nosso canal. E antes de eu falar do que se trata o vídeo de hoje, eu peço para que vocês adotem o procedimento padrão de sempre, que eu sempre peço para que vocês adotem todo santo vídeo nosso, deixar o like, assim que vocês abrirem, ativarem o sininho para as notificações, caso vocês já sejam inscritos do canal e não ativaram. E se você não é inscrito aqui do nosso canal, chegou em um outro vídeo por acaso, por favor, assine aqui o nosso canal, se inscreva no nosso canal, para você ter acesso ao nosso conteúdo e também receber vídeos futuros nossos e também ver quais vídeos a gente vai produzir, quais outros vídeos também a gente produziu ao longo desse inteirinho prévio em que você não estava presente. E antes, também não mais importante, por último, eu peço para que vocês se inscrevam e nos sigam nas nossas redes sociais também, nas nossas contas das redes, Facebook PROGLand, Instagram PROG_land, Groover, caso você seja um músico e queira enviar seu material para a gente fazer resenha, PROG_land, e também o nosso site proglandmusica.wordpress.com, onde nós temos um site de entrevistas e de resenhas de novos lançamentos. De entrevistas, a gente teve inúmeras entrevistas, vamos continuar fazendo, e as entrevistas que não puderem parar em vídeo aqui no nosso canal vão parar lá. Vão lá no nosso site, confiram o nosso material, confiram as resenhas dos lançamentos brilhantemente feitas pelo Thiago Menezes e as listas de entrevistas que já fizemos com gente desde Frank Bornerman do Eloy até sei lá, Crack the Sky, Le Soir e por aí vai. Tudo, o link de tudo tá aqui na bio, né? E o vídeo de hoje é um vídeo de entrevistas, abrindo a nossa temporada de entrevistas em vídeo, né, no nosso canal em 2025. A gente não podia abrir de uma maneira melhor, uma entrevista internacional com Roine Stolt, músico, multinstrumentista, compositor, arranjador, tudo o que vocês possam imaginar, sueco, né? Nessa entrevista especial, exclusiva aqui para PROGLand, ele fala um pouco dos 50 anos de carreira dele, completados esse ano com a estreia discográfica dele no Kaipa, banda que ele integrou também junto com o Flower Kings, a banda que ele é mais conhecido e tudo mais, né, por integrar desde 1994, sendo líder criativo da banda junto com Hasse Froberg. Também conversamos, claro, sobre o Kaipa, sobre essas primeiras gravações da banda, sobre o próprio Flower Kings. Esse ano tem 2 discos importantes, em especial, que a gente falou na entrevista. Foi o Back in the World of Adventures, disco de estreia da banda de 1995, e o Space Revolver, de 2000, né? Ele também detalhou como é o processo de composição dele e tudo mais na banda e etc. E também revelou em primeira mão detalhes do novo disco que vai ser lançado agora em maio, Love, né? E também, além de nós falarmos muito sobre, claro, Flower Kings, também conversamos sobre outros projetos dele, o Transatlantic, né? Ele esclarece na entrevista o Transatlantic acabou ou não, como é que eram as gravações dos discos, os trabalhos favoritos, inclusive, do Transatlantic dele. Também conversamos sobre o Seal Within, projeto supergrupo também que ele tocou e etc. Numa entrevista muito bacana, muito abrangedora do que é a trajetória do Roine Stolt. Eu espero que vocês gostem, espero muito que vocês curtam. Ele abriu coisas bem legais, bem bacanas, foi muito gentil, muito solícito. E enfim, é isso. Eu espero que vocês curtam essa entrevista que abre a porteira para as entrevistas que nós vamos publicar ao longo agora do ano aqui no nosso canal, em vídeo. Vem muita coisa aí, muitos convidados aí que vocês nem imaginam. Boa entrevista para vocês. Fala pessoal, estamos aqui em mais uma entrevista no nosso canal e hoje eu estou tendo o prazer de entrevistar um cara, um músico, produtor, multi-instrumentista, tudo que vocês podem imaginar, que eu estava afim há muito tempo de trazer aqui no nosso canal para uma entrevista exclusiva.
Roine Stolt. He plays in a lot of bands, Flower
Mhm.
Kings, Transatlantic, See It Within. We all covered this in this interview. First
Yeah.
of all, I would like to thank you again, again, and again for your acceptance. And I would like to start this interview. As I said, we're gonna cover all these 50-year span of your career, in
Mhm.
least counting discographically when you started,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
Sure.
all this career, all this journey. And my first question is related to those beginnings.
Mhm.
Would like to I like to activate a little bit of a time machine to the 70s when you started.
Yeah.
You started your career quite early with Kaipa first album 1975, and with
Mhm.
back then you were in your teens. Looking back at these 50 years, what differences do you notice between the Roine of 50 years ago when you had 17, 18 years old, and to the
Mhm.
Roine today, from today? Of course, there's the thing of maturity, but there are things that you perceive that remained unchanged in you over the course of these years as a as a performer and composer.
I don't know where to start actually, but I mean, at the time when I started playing professionally with Kaipa, I think I was 17 or maybe 18, so I was a very young lad at the time. And probably in my mind at the time, I would be happy to make an album sometime, sometime in my life, make one album and or go on a little tour or something like that. When I met these guys and they were a bit older than me and had been professionals for a while, and I was thinking with Kaipa maybe I can get into that professional scene, and maybe one day make a record or do a proper tour, which of course happened quite quickly. So now we got to do an album and got signed to Decca, and we started playing live shows all over
Yeah.
Sweden, and we did radio programs live. So we did at the time play live, in national radio in Sweden, things like that, television also. And so I just got kicked into the professional world in a way, But even at that time, I was thinking, okay, I'll do this for a couple of years, and then I go back study, get a proper education and be something fancy, make a lot of money. But I just kept going with music. And even when I stopped with Kaipa, I started other projects and I was learning about recording and got interested in how to record an album and how to mix an album, etc., etc. So that kind of thing I did for some years and even working at the studio as an engineer, and learning the trade of recording and producing and arranging stuff. So, I mean, the journey from my very first year as a musician has been a learning process all the way. Every new band I get into, sometimes playing, let's say, playing blues. Actually, I'm going to go play blues tomorrow with some guys. I maybe
Oh,
told you, yeah, I'm gonna play blues. That's classic blues. So I learned that from that, and I learned more like classical music, symphonic music, that kind of thing. I took interest in the production side of things, and even I think at one point started my own record label that I still have. That's called Foxtrot Records.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, playing different styles of music and then finally coming back because I did commercial stuff also. So I was producing people who had radio hits, on Swedish radio. And then I felt at some point probably I had my kids were born, I think, both of them, two boys. And then I felt at this time in life, at whatever 35 or something like that, nearing 40 hours, I'm gonna do it proper, and I want to come back to the progressive rock, or the more the freedom of that type of music, to write whatever I wanted. And I had already acquired some synthesizers and organs and stuff like that, and I already played bass because that's how I started in the very beginning. So I had just got a drummer in, and I did the first Flower King album, So that's basically a drummer and myself playing bass and all the keyboards and guitars and singing. So that's how the Flower King started, in a way, and getting so much good reviews, getting so much interest from abroad. And that was actually the first time. People contacting me from United States, from Japan, from Asia, from South America, from England, blah, 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 Germany. And suddenly I realized there's an audience out there for this kind of music still. Even when whatever Genesis was singing We Can't Dance, and they had abandoned the progressive style, so to speak. And yes, we're making pop records. Then I could realize that there's still an interest for this type of music that I grew up listening to, anything from Frank Zappa to Genesis and Yes and King Crimson and all that, So when the Flower King started, I set out to do something where I didn't have to take into account, will this sell? And is this commercial? And there was no one telling me you gotta edit your song, so I had all the freedom. And lo and behold, when I do this, suddenly everything start, all the interest coming in. I was thinking, I've been sitting for 10 years now trying to make commercial music and having not a lot of success, and then suddenly we do.
It's only a relief.
Yeah,
only a relief.
Yeah. Totally, and a surprise, I would say, a big surprise for me, So it just took off from there. And we did Back in the World of Adventures, we did Retropolis, and starting selling more, and Stardust, and then kicked off, and then we got invited to different festivals around the world, and everything, started spinning.
Yeah.
And then we got signed to Inside Out and Sony, as we are now.
Flower King's career is absolutely glorious, and gorgeous, of course, because, man, everybody says that the Dream Theater was the pinnacle of band creating loads of suites and long songs, but you guys are really the pinnacle of that, because every album has long tunes, long suites that I love, and I always kind of really enjoyed that discography of the Flower Kings, because it has a sense of continuation of a work, but it has you and Hess and the other guys, Jonas, had forget a style, but you guys keep a constant evolution in sound, in discography, in musics themselves. And it's really, really, really interesting. I was hearing album, and I was really surprised, because, man, these guys hadn't lose their shops in any form. Because I personally, my favorite phase of the band was from Flower Power until The Sum of No Evil. But the previous albums and the later albums after this period, I love Adam and Eve, for example. It's like a cinematic pieces, I think, of music.
I think the freedom of writing anything and not have to worry about, is it 5 minutes, is it 10 minutes, is there someone from the record label going to tell you to cut down the song, like it used to be back in the day, because they wanted to have songs played on the radio. But we don't have any kind of a consideration. Even if I have to say we have shorter songs, and I mean, like now on the new album we have. I think the one song is probably like 12 or 13 minutes, and there are one that's 11, I think. But then we have shorter songs that are around 3 minutes to 5 minutes to 6 minutes. But it's funny because there was a time I remember sitting in the studio with Transatlantic, and it could have been the first album actually, somewhere in New York and in the studio. And we were trying to push the song to be a little bit longer, and I was doing this thing on the guitar, with the echo delay, just going and going, and Mike was yelling like, "Oh, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going! We're gonna make the longest song ever, the whatever it was, 35 minutes or 31 minutes, I can't remember." And when we stopped, and I just said, "Well, yeah, we can try, but truth is we have a song with the Flower Kings that's over 60 minutes." It will be hard for us to keep going with this song for another 30 minutes, but good try. But yeah, so we were jokingly calling ourselves the kings, not only the kings of flowers, but the kings of epics. Of epic
Yeah.
The Flower Kings are the kings of epic songs,
Yeah. Man, I love Dream Theater, but Dream Theater comparing to you guys in terms of creating epics and creating loads of longer songs are absolutely incomparable, because you guys use it to do that with more frequency than
It could be
theirs.
more frequency than most, I would say, probably. I couldn't think of a band that does so many long songs. There's always been like Pink Floyd. They've been doing long songs. Yes, did back in the day when they did Topographic Oceans, but these were 19 minutes, 18 minutes. Pink Floyd, of course, they did what's that album? There's one album that has very long songs.
I think
And
it was Animals. Animals
sorry?
had some Pink Floyd album with
Oh
longer
yeah,
songs.
you're
I
right,
think
right. Yeah, right.
Animals, so
Yeah.
composed by long songs. But
Oh yeah.
you were talking about long songs. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think you're gonna elaborate more on that, given my question.
Yeah.
Uh, do you
It,
think that is easier to create longer songs than shorter ones?
well, yeah, yes and no, because I mean, if you make a long song, you have to be still. I mean, you have to be focused on. It's not about making a song very long. That's not the point. The point is to get so much content in the song, so many great melodies or riffs or atmospheric, spaced out things, and connect it in a way so it becomes interesting. It's like I'm sometimes comparing making an epic song like that to making a movie. If you make a movie and you have the listener, or you have the one sitting in the movie theater and watching a movie. I like seeing long movies. Like 3 hours is fine with me. 2 hours is fine. But a movie that's 1 hour or whatever, 50 minutes, that's too short.
Yeah,
I get into the mood of take me to another world, for 1.5 hours or something like that. And I think it's probably the same thing with music. The music, I think, regardless of where you are on this planet, you put on let's say Pink Floyd album, and you listen to it, and it takes you away for half an hour or something like that, and it's a nice place to be. So I think what we're trying to
yeah,
create with the Flower Kings is some kind of a magic place. It takes you with lots of melodies, and sometimes with the words, and sometimes with the sounds, and so it's I think it's similar to making a movie actually. But if
yeah,
you write only 3 minute songs to get them played on the radio, that's something else. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, I loved a lot of the Beatles stuff, and they were just short songs. But But when they do something like I'm the Walrus, then start to listen a little bit more because
Yeah.
it's interesting and it's a little bit longer and kind of
Yes.
that thing.
Yeah. We were talking now about the beginning of your career in Kaipa, stuff like
Mm.
that. What memories do you have from that first album from 1975? I love that record. I need to ask that because one of my favorite songs from the Kaipa, and I think of all the Swedish prog scene from the 70s, was Oceaner for the Leave for that
Yeah, yeah,
record, that
yeah,
the last
yeah.
song of that record. Did all those songs from that first album already exist? You worked with Hans Lundin on studio creating that,
That
or
that was
was the how was the
that,
process?
that was actually songs I had before joining the band. So these were just songs so that's my song, and another one called Förlorad in Istanbul, Lost in Istanbul. That's another shorter instrumental.
Yeah.
But Oceaner för the Leave, that's a song I had already when I joined the band. So I was just rehearsing with them and then said, oh, don't you write songs? And I said, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to show you my songs. They're not good. But suddenly I sort of boosted up a little bit and say, well, okay, I take my little tape recorder, at the time you had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And I brought my tape and I played them the song, and say, oh, yeah, let's start rehearse that. So that was actually the first song, real epic song I got that I wrote, on the recorded. I mean, officially. And we, I think at the time we used to play the songs live before going into the studio and record them. So, but I mean, in the end, it ended up on the album, and it was just like for me magic to have. For once in my life, I had a LP record with my own song on it. So that was so for the second album I started writing more songs, and for the third album even more songs. So that kind of I mean that song, that very first song you mentioned, that was like sort of the acid test. Can I write songs, will the audience like it? And obviously they liked it live, and we sort of sometimes extended with this long Hammond organ solo, and it was really one of the songs that stayed in the set list for very long. So that got me into thinking, well, maybe I can write songs too after all, and it just went on
Yeah,
from there.
yeah.
So
And
it was an important song for me.
yeah. Oh, thanks for that. It was one of my personal favorites from that, from the whole Kappa discography, I think, and for your
Mm.
career, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would like to ask something that always intrigued me in a certain way in Kaipa,
Mm,
because you guys started as a Swedish language band.
mhm.
Where did the idea to start singing in English came from? From notes from the past onwards, after the return of the band, was it Hans' idea? It was yours
Uh,
idea?
no, I think it was. I think it was probably Hans' idea, because at the time, I mean, I was already in the Flower Kings, and I think it came from a phone call. He called me and said, "Do you want to? I'm recording some songs," he said, "and do you want to play some guitar on it, or a song or two, or something like that?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." So I recorded my guitar on it, and then he said, "Well, can you record for the other songs too?" And suddenly I was playing guitar on all the album. And I can't remember if he wrote all the lyrics for that first album, but I think he probably saw that the Flower Kings had success abroad, and we were singing English. So I think he probably realized that to reach out to other countries, we got to sing in English. So that's, I think, how it started, and he wrote most of the lyrics for the second and third album. I wrote some of the lyrics actually.
uh, 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 I would like to now to talk about more about the Flower Kings, especially you
Mhm.
have this year marking 30 anniversary of uh, really important records. The first one back in the
Yeah, yeah.
world of adventures, and I would like to ask before asking something properly from that album.
Mhm.
The band exists for 30 years, and you were playing with Hasse Froberg, especially, is
Mhm.
your partner, your inseparable partner from
Yeah.
1994. And one of the things that I most like is that the band that never stopped never had a hiatus like Kaipa had. Uh, what do you think, in your opinion, what makes the Flower King last so long until today, especially when compared to Kaipa, which broke up and stuff like that?
Mhm. Yeah. I think it's probably, I don't know. It's a strong support from the audience, people who buy the albums, people who come to the concert. And also, I think at the time I started the Flower Kings, I said to someone, I probably said to more than one person, so I said something like, this is the band I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And that sounded like a kind of like a bold statement. This is the band I'm going to be for the rest of my life. But I think I probably meant it. I'm tired of being in different bands, and starting up something and then stopping and or joining another band, So why don't you just put all your energy into one band and make it work, whatever it takes, and just go on building on that. But I understand sometimes you can't be in a band because you break up, or when the Beatles broke up, Pink Floyd broke up. Many bands do, or
Yeah,
Frank Zappa had different musicians coming in and out all the time. So, but I mean, it's with the Flower Kings, as long as it works and as long as we are friends, which is a very important part of it.
yeah,
You can't really play with people that you aren't friends with. You can do it for a while, but you can't do it forever. So the fact that we really get on well and we can laugh a lot, we can have fun, we can sometimes argue, as any family do, of course.
yeah,
Yeah, but we always are respectful and listen to each other and take in all the arguments and try to find a solution. And I mean, it's open doors for anyone who want to write songs. You can write songs. So Hasse has been writing songs. Jonas Reingold did back in the day. He did write songs. And Michael, my brother, has been writing songs. And anyone who's in and Lalle also, of course, and Zach Kamins, who was the keyboardist for a while, he did write songs. So there's always been open doors, to if you have an idea, if you have a song, throw it in and see what the rest of the guys think. And I think that's important too. So I mean, no, it's no secret. Yes, I sort of rule the band, but I rule it with very soft fists, if you know what I mean. It's not like
yeah.
I'm holding them like this.
No,
It's I suggest things, I write songs, I suggest tours, I suggest albums, and mostly we get along perfect. So it's a smooth ride, and as long as it is, I can see no reason to stop. No. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
we just keep going, and we're lucky, very very lucky.
I think all the bands you had talking about
Mhm.
direction, the people who takes the lead in the band. One of the
Yeah.
things that I most like when I don't remember which member said of particular band he said.
Mhm.
I don't recall really,
Mhm.
but he said that he was sort of main songwriter for the band and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
band has kept together all for a long time. I think it was from YouTube. One
Mhm.
journalist had asked to Bono why the band had endured for so long with the same
Mhm.
lineup. He didn't change at all, one member since 1977, 1978. And he
Yeah,
said that because he and The Edge were the main songwriters, and he
yeah,
said that the band for him and The Edge towards the two other members was a sort of kind dictatorship, and I love that expression.
yeah. Yeah, I mean,
And
it's yeah, kind of a kind or a soft dictatorship. Yeah, that's not a bad description actually. So it's like, I mean, I can't remember any time that we've been in hard arguments about anything actually. Because if I feel the rest of the band is really pushing for something, I do step back. I say, okay, you guys want it. I still think it's wrong, but you're four guys and you want to do this way, and then I step back. And occasionally there may be a time when I say, well, just trust me on this, this will be good. And they say, okay, let's go. So I
trust
mean,
is, is
we're
really
lucky.
important.
Sorry.
Trust is really important
Oh
because they
yeah,
trust you to
yeah,
say that.
yeah. But I mean, it's also well, the understanding of knowing when you should push forward and when you should sort of step back, because it's I mean, of course, I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm almost twice the age of the drummer. So he's been professional for a long time, but I've been I've been professional for twice as long, and made this whatever 250 or 300 albums over the years. So it's, of course, I have all this experience, and it would be stupid to not listen to the guy that have all this experience.
Yeah,
I would feel the same thing if I step in. For instance, when I did this album with John Anderson, he's been around for forever. I mean, since Yes started in 67 or 68, I think. Why wouldn't I listen to him? So if he tell me something, Roine, I think we should change that section, I wouldn't say, no, John, let's do it my way. I think, well, he's the guy that sang in Yes. Why wouldn't I listen to him?
yeah,
So, and
yeah.
the same thing. If you work with someone that's have lots of great experience, you listen to them in music or at work or wherever. Your parents. Listen to your parents. They
Yeah,
know.
they had a reason to make that
Yeah,
appointment to suggest that. It's always like
totally.
that. It's experience is really, as you said in the beginning of the interview, learning. These
Mm.
years max marks 30 years of back in the world as adventurous. As I was saying, this album is one of my favorites from the band. It has some really, really cool tunes, like cool tunes to say the least, of course. World
Yeah.
of Adventures, Go West Judas. What memories do you had talking about in the beginning of the interview, the process of creating in a certain way the Flower Kings. But
Mhm.
what memories do you have from creating the track list from this record, this first album? When I listen to it, is it's what amazes me in every hearing that I had from the tracks from this album. It sounds like a debut that was already well formed from the band. It's not uh, fumbling around before finding a more mature sound and style,
Mhm.
as other progressive bands used to do. Yes, didn't start with that really crafted sound from Fragile, Close to the Edge, Genesis too, neither.
Mhm.
Genesis neither. And
Yeah.
how was the process? Because it is really a well formed debut album. It's really amazing that.
It is, well, if you view it like this, it is the debut album for the Flower Kings, but 1 year earlier, I did an album that was called The Flower King.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one, or are you familiar with that album?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
familiar.
yeah. So that album, that sort of started everything, and I was sort of getting up to speed, and I already started developing and formulating. I mean, it's that album has the track The Flower King, of course, and another one called Di Sonata is quite complicated, and then it has the long track that's called Humanissimo. That's a 20-minute piece, you know. And I think at the time I was lucky or happy, I would say, because I could finally put in all the ideas, and I could try different things that I've been wanting to have put in music, but maybe I couldn't because it wasn't commercial enough. But now I could just disregard what's commercial, and I could take from music I've experienced, heard, folk music, jazz, fusion,
Yeah.
symphonic, whatever, you know, rock music, blues, and I could put everything into this album. So I think when it came to the point where I realized people liked the Flower King album, and I decided to make another one really quick, you know, I had already songs that was written sometimes 5 years before that, but I couldn't really go to the record labels at the time because they weren't commercial songs. But now suddenly I have this bank of prog songs that I could go into, and I could adjust them a little bit. I could add maybe a section. I could maybe add some vocal section, or add some solo session, or like whatever synth thing, you know. And so I could build without spending forever. I had like a wealth of material to dig from, that I could create the second album, Back in the World of Adventures. So that's maybe one of the reasons why it sounds so mature, because it was mature. It was like a cheese sitting there just waiting, you know.
But the writing of Go West Judas, specifically that song.
Yeah, I think Go With Judas probably came from, many of the songs with the Flower Kings is actually written on a piano or a keyboard, like an electric piano or a grand piano or something like that. But Go With Judas was definitely a song that was written on the electric guitar. So I was probably just sitting around, you know, and I wanted to do something that was a riff, and something that was in odd time signature. I can't remember now. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's in 7, 7, 8. So and then just building from that riff, thinking, is this going to be instrumental or is it going to be vocal? And I was thinking, it sounds like instrumental, but what happens if I sing on top of it? Play the riff and then take the riff down a little bit, and then you sing on top of it. And then I was just developing different sections. There comes this synthesizer solo, and then building again different sections on top of that, you know, and coming back, of course. So it's not a super complicated song, but if one is familiar with playing in odd time signatures like 7/8 or 9/8 or something, 13, I mean, it's here in Europe, at least in Sweden, I would say we don't have that much. Maybe a little bit in the folk music, but in popular music it's just like 4/4 or something like that, or disco. So the intention was to create something that had a bit of a more complicated flavor, you know, with the odd time and the riff. A little bit of a harder edge, but still melodic, I would say.
Yeah. Until today, you primarily write Flower King's material on piano? I was curious by hearing that.
Yeah, I would say probably 80% of the material is written on piano. Actually, yeah.
Oh yeah.
The piano is good. I'll tell you, the piano is good because you have your left hand for the bass notes, and then you have your right hand for the chords and for the melody. And so for me a lot of Flower King's music, in particular the new album, very rarely stay just on the root note in terms of bass. Let's say if you play a G chord, the bass is not in G.
Yeah.
It could be in whatever. So it's just the bass notes are sort of wandering around a little bit, like in classical music. If you listen to Bach or something like that, it's like bass notes are all over the place, and that's very common in the Flower Kings music. And it's, in particular, I realize now, rehearsing a bit of it, I realize on the new album that comes out in May this year.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a new one. You have to check.
we're
You
gonna
have to
talk about
check it.
that.
It's like a lot taken from classical music, and with this wandering around bass notes, it is much easier to write on a piano than writing on a guitar, because sometimes you have to sort of stretch your fingers
No,
on.
yeah.
Yeah, so the guitar is like by nature is great for some things, like for riffs. That guitar is great, and for playing leads and melodies and stuff like that. But for the more the orchestral overview, I prefer to write on the piano.
You use these methods of writing to other projects too?
Oh yeah,
or-
totally. I mean,
Oh,
for Transatlantic, the same thing. I'm a guitar player in Transatlantic, but I wrote most of my Transatlantic songs on the piano.
do you have wrote a trivia total things? Do you
Yeah.
have wrote something on bass?
Oh, there may have been something very long ago, actually, when I was a bass player in my first bands. I remember writing some bass riffs and building a song upon that, really. But I mean, not nowadays. It's like it doesn't come natural to sit down with the bass. I have a couple of basses, but I just pick them out when I
Oh,
I
yeah.
got something or jam with someone or something like that.
This
So
year we've had I mean, you were talking about songwriting. I originally was scheduled stuff like that
yeah,
to do this question in a more later part of the interview, but I will do it as a hook, as we were talking about songwriting and songwriting methods. You always had wrote lyrics that are quite naturalistic, spiritual, positive.
yeah,
In the beginning of the interview, we were talking about the easier methods, this dilemma of longer songs, shorter songs,
yeah.
the best way of writing, stuff like that. Uh, and I will ask you about that too, in terms of lyrics now.
Yeah.
This style of writing about these naturalistic, positive, spiritual themes is easier for you than writing to more heavier things, complicated, uh, long
I
form
think, yeah.
things,
I mean,
stuff like that.
I think it has changed over time, because in the very beginning it was more difficult for me. I mean, for starters, it was more difficult to write in English, because it's not my native language. So over the years, I mean, over these 30 years, I sort of it gets easier, because you learn more, and uh, and I would say that in the beginning I was struggling a bit, and I was probably writing the music first and writing the lyrics, and then trying to come up with clever lyrics, and leaning a bit, as you say, sometimes about well, you say naturalistic, but something positive, to try to convey something that's positive and uplifting, or something. The view of the world isn't too dark and gloomy, because there's so many other bands doing that. So I felt, why should I? there's there's really no room for me in that. And it's not me. I mean, I'm kind of a lighthearted, and usually, as I said, within the band, we're joking all the time, and we're laughing, and I would say we're kind of not too serious people. We're having fun, and we like to have fun and joke and laugh and things like that. So when it comes to writing lyrics, um, I try to be myself, as close to myself as I can be, you know, and my inner thoughts of the world as I see it. And sometimes that's dealing with, it could be with what some people may say spiritual things, you know, not necessarily belief in a God or something like that. It's kind of, I would say, very open, depending on who you are and where you come from and what religion you're coming from. You can find things in it. You can find some thoughts and some wisdom, maybe if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes my lyrics has become a little bit political, and some fans don't like that at all. You know, "No, you
Yeah,
should
yeah,
shut up and play the guitar. Don't you ever dare to criticize
yeah.
America."
It
That kind of
always that this kind of people.
yeah. And I don't criticize America. I criticize some things just the way as I could criticize the Swedish government or the British government or some stupid politician in
Yeah,
Italy or in Switzerland or whatever. I have the freedom still to do that without
yeah,
being, you know, put in jail. So I I take the liberty of being a little bit political sometimes. But I mean, generally, I would say most of my lyrics are more like, and sometimes telling a story or of something, you know, from a historical, you know, perspective. Maybe I mean, we had a song on that first album that's called "Train to Nowhere." That's just like a view back to the concentration camps, you know, when they were mostly Polish people or Czech people were taken to the concentration camps, you know. So that's
yeah,
what Train Nowhere is about, you know. But you know, whatever comes to me natural, I don't want to sit down and force something to be written about some special topic, you know, that's popular or whatever other people think. I frankly I don't, you know, it doesn't really, I don't care about it.
yeah, yeah,
It's I think it's up to each and everyone to write whatever they feel is important, you know. And that's usually when and I mean, actually, over I would say the last 3 or 4 albums, many times I've just put up a microphone because, you know, you write music and then you have like program some drums, so you have like a demo. And then I have the demo, and then I'm thinking about the vocal section, and then I just put up a microphone, and then I start singing. And many times I can keep a lot of it because I'm thinking what's coming, you know, spontaneously from my mind or my subconscious is maybe something worth telling. So I try to keep it, and I even to the point where I've kept that very recording of, well, call it the demo vocal recording, you know, because there's certain, you're in a certain mood and then you sing something and it may sound more important than if you try to sing it proper again or be a good singer or something like that. So I very much like a feeling guy. So if I feel that the vocal has some urgency, then I rather keep that than to have a very clean, proper vocal take of it, you know. But it's like sometimes I use bits and pieces. So there's no general rule really. Everything is judged, you know, based on feeling, what I feel for.
This year
Yeah.
we had 25 years of another great record from the Flower Kings, which was Space Revolver. For
Mhm.
me personally, the one of the most high levels of creative peak of the band.
Yeah.
It marks Jonas' debut on the bass.
Mm.
Do you think this album was significant for the band in terms of discography, in terms of having songs that became concert staples? I Am the Sun.
Yeah. It's a great song. Yeah, it's an epic, but it's divided into two. We decided to divide it into two because we had already making all these other albums like Stardust and Flower Power. We had all this long Garden of Dreams. So it was just felt like, oh, we can't do another album with this magnum song. We need to cut it in half.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a creative period of time, and we started playing more and more. We went to America again, and we started playing more in Europe. And I think we just were in a creative flow, so to speak. And as I say, Jonas joined the band. I think though that Jonas played probably half the album. He played the bass, and I played the bass on the other half. So because he was just joining the band. So the first album that he played all the bass was actually Rainmaker. Rainmaker was first proper album. But Space Revolver was it was a very creative time, and as you say, I Am the Sun is a great song. There's some other interesting songs on that too. I mean, I like that album very much.
I believe many of the most celebrated thing on Flower Kings were the longer tracks. I mean, the more shorter ones were really, really amazing to say the least. Like Garden of Dreams, Third Stardust, We Are, Retropolis, Properly. Is there any song that personally you think among these epic, these long form tunes that you think is somewhat underrated? I know that the fans were really hardcore fans and they know every song, every solo, and stuff like that. But is there any song that you personally think that is somewhat underrated? One that people don't mention first, but you always find very, very significant?
Mhm. You mean of the long songs or of any song?
I was
Just the
thinking,
long.
I mean, the longer ones, but you can sit
Yeah.
any other.
I mean, of the longer songs, I think probably it's kind of fair as it is because I think Stardust We Are is one of the better songs. I think in a song called Numbers that was on Banks of Eden, I think. The opening track of Banks of Eden called Numbers. That's a really good song.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one of the better epic songs, I think, of later years. And then there's another that wasn't that good, I think. That was a long song that shouldn't have been a long song. Now looking back, but that happens to everyone. Sometimes you work on something and it didn't turn out that super great. I can't even remember the name of the song right now, but I think I said Numbers was a great song and also great live. We played that live many times and it really worked really well live. So that's probably something we're going to pick up playing live again. And I mean, other than that, it's not like there's lots of great songs, but there may be one or two that isn't that great, to be honest. I mean, it happens to every band. Every
Ah.
band. I mean, even the Beatles had songs that weren't that great.
Which
So
ones do you consider that not too great?
uh, I can't even remember the titles of them now because, as you say,
Too many
whatever.
songs. Too many
I mean,
songs to remember.
17 albums. Come on. How could I possibly remember the names of all the songs? No, I mean it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me.
No?
It's something that happens to everyone. You can't be on top form every time. But I'm really happy when you do something, and I have to say the new album is something that's coming out now in May. It's a bit of a grower. It's possibly something that some people will not like directly. But I think if they listen to it, give it more than one spin, if they give it 5 or 10 spins, they're going to start loving the album. I think it's probably some of the strongest material we've done in 15 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And that goes for the playing, it goes for the writing, it goes for the lyrics, I think.
The synthesis of all these topics together Is
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
one of that the most of the band albums were double albums. You
Mhm.
were quite prolific as a songwriter and musician. Look at you now. The band has a more simplified approach in terms of duration time from the record.
Yeah.
It is comfortable. It's more comfortable to you make long works because you could fewer songs. Or was there ever a song that almost didn't make it onto an album but stayed the high quality of the sessions? Do you have this dilemma of, oh, I had so many great tracks on this record, I have to cut, really having a good time to cut one for the final track
Mm.
list? Which album do you notice this difficult time in doing this, in having this dilemma of, oh, these sections were really in high level, we wrote really high standard material, we're gonna having a really hard time to cut track?
Yeah. I would say probably not that often. I mean, it doesn't happen often, really. It's a rare thing, you know. But for this new album that we recorded, we had almost two albums worth of material, but we had to pick out for one
The
because I
upcoming,
yeah, for the coming it's a single album, but we had material for two albums. So there's already material recorded, but we had to pick songs that sort of worked well together. So decision to make it a single album, that I mean, when we did let's say Flower Power or Stardust We Are, we had these were the songs we had, and it made a double album or double CD. But for this new one, we decided to not do a double CD. So we left them, just put them on the side, and we'll see what we can do for next album. And then we have more time, and we can focus, you know, properly, and maybe rewrite some of it and see what of the recordings we can use. Which is, I mean, we're in a good place in that sense. We don't have to start from scratch, if you know what I mean. For next album, we have already we're halfway there, I would say, which is good.
to sort of wrap up this Flower Kings part of interview, I need to ask about the upcoming album that
Mhm.
will be releasing in May, next May. What we could expect from this album? Of course, I didn't want to force you to spoil too many things, but what the fans could expect from this new album? I have to say that my expectations were quite high. It's quite high, are quite high because
Mhm.
I really like it. Look at you now.
Mhm.
So what could
I think,
we
yeah,
expect?
I mean, I think I would put it like this: if you anyone who likes Look at You Now will most likely like this one. As I said, it may take some more time, you know, and that could be a good sign. I think stylistically, it goes back a little bit more. I mean, if you look at You Now, a little bit more modern sounding, and this new album is probably sounding a little bit more like the old albums from the late 90s, like, you know, whatever, Stardust or the early, I
Was
mean,
a
Rain.
deliberate move?
A little bit, I think. But I was looking for a certain sound also, you know, so it's like quite dynamic and lots of taking down and leave space, you know, and not putting on too many layers of guitars or keyboards. Leave space for the vocals and leave. There's a really good drum sound. I'm sitting here in my studio and hearing because we were doing a video, and just turning up the volume a bit, you know, and you can feel the kick drum in a way I heard on the Flower Kings record before. It's almost like
Wow.
the kick drum is in the room, you know, with that low that you can feel in your gut.
Yeah.
Not like in a hard rock way, but in a very bombastic, more like a Led Zeppelin way.
Yeah.
You can feel the push in the kick drum, and
My
the
gosh.
tom sounds great, and the bass guitar sound is really low and fill up everything, So the sound of the album is terrific, I would say. The songs are really good, and everyone is playing. There's some really nice keyboard features from Lala, and yeah, I mean, generally, I'm just more happy with this album than I've been in a very long time. So that's all I can say. I mean, then maybe the audience see it completely different, but I mean, for me, I've been here all the time. I've seen the process of Flower Kings through the years, and this is a little bit of a peak for me. I'm not sure if it is the peak, because it's very hard to top Stardust We Are. It's like always been for me like a high point, But
It's your favorite one, this.
yeah, I mean, it's been like that, Not sound wise, maybe not even playing wise, but as far as songwriting, I think Stardust is a very strong album. But this one is sort of, it's making its way into the top for me, actually.
Mm.
We'll see. We'll see.
Let's see. I hope. I trust in you. I trust in you.
Yeah.
Someone has to ask about some of your other projects, especially Transatlantic, which I
Yeah.
loved, and I was really sad when I knew the band was in final stint over this last era with Absolute Universe, the tour. Did the band really break up? The last tour was announced as a band final act. Do you see yourself playing with Neil, Mike, and Pete again in the near future, or in some time in the future?
Well, never say never, but I mean, when we made that last album, I think I knew, and I may not have told them at the time we made the album, but I think once the album was mixed, I felt like it was the end for me. And so I knew already when we did the last tour that, and I told someone in the band, I think it may have been Pete. I told Pete that this is the last thing I do, and I enjoyed it. So it's not that I left because I don't like them. It's just that I felt like we're making an album and it takes a long time, and then you need to have everything work with my main band, which is the Flower Kings, of course. And I just felt like we have done 5 albums, and the last one is really great, and it just felt like the ending of something. How can we make another album? Will it be as fun? Will it be as good? So I think you just stop when you get to the top, and then you stop. You don't go down. Please don't go down. From the top. So I knew already when we did the last tour, that I was not going to be in the band. And I said, if you want to carry on, you can carry on, but I'm leaving the band. And
You mentioned how weird was a sort of recording process within the band, because you had to prepare them yourselves to start recording or rehearsing 1 year or almost 2 years before the album actually got released. It was a because you had to a sort of doing that factor of merging together all these prolific guys who play in 1,000 bands at the same time.
I think we recorded in the summertime, actually, here in Sweden. It's the same studio as we recorded with the Flower Kings. We recorded the backing tracks, and I put on my guitars, and then it just took forever, and everyone went out. I think Neil and Mike went out with Steve Morse. What's the name of that band? I can't remember now. Steve Morse and Casey McPherson, they have a band. Anyway, so they went out touring, and then there were other stuff, and Mike went away with other, whatever, Sons of Apollo or something like that, So everything took very, very long time, So by the time the album was finished and mixed, it's been, I don't know, 1 year or 1.5 or something like that.
Wow,
So that's
really a long
part.
time.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the the reason why it doesn't feel like a band in that the same way as, I suppose, like the Flower Kings or Transatlantic wasn't. I would say it's like an ongoing band. It's more like we did some albums, and then we did a bit of touring, and then we stopped, and then we started again after 5 years, and then we did 2 albums, and so that kind of thing, and you couldn't really see a thread of albums and tours and going for a while, so it was hard to building it up, more than we did. It's a really good band, but and I have to say the last tour was really good, and in particular the show we did in Paris, I think, was really, really good show. So
Live record is stunning.
yeah, I mean the records are all good, I think, but I think in particular the Whirlwind was probably my favorite album, and the last one we did. That's the 2 album I enjoy most, actually.
You and New Morse maintain a relationship, a partnership. Do you think there's are chances of seeing you and Morse, specifically you two only, collaborating in a sort of point?
We announced a tour together, I have to say, so it's a long way from you, but yeah, sure. I mean, we keep in contact, and Neil just contacted me a couple of months ago and said, how do you feel about going on a joint tour in Europe, with my band, with the Resonance, the band he has together with the guys. By the way, a really good album. I listened. It's like lots of new faces, and the drummer of the band was actually one of the crew guys for Transatlantic on the last 2, and a super talented guy. He could play the drums, he played piano, really beautiful, and a super nice guy altogether. So so we're doing this in the beginning of June, doing shows in Europe, and that's gonna be great fun, actually.
One of the things, one of the most memorable, for me, remarkable moments of Transatlantic, it's many fans didn't see I think it was a special moment because it wasn't proper stuff of new material, of the proper material of the band. Was the moment that I really love, when you guys play with John Anderson in Revealing Signs of God, and I think it was a Cruise to the Edge in 2014.
Yeah.
I love that. And I would like to ask, what was that the moment when John approached you with idea of you guys collaborating together for invention of knowledge, or the desire of collaboration exists before that?
I think no, not before that. I think we maybe occasionally bumped into each other at some point, but I think the first time we played together was actually on the boat, and playing the material, and I remember him sending out emails, and we were going to play, and you and I, and long distance run around, I think. So there's lots of practicing for that, finding out all the Steve Howe guitar parts, which is not always easy, but I was happy to do it. And then I remember one morning opening the mail, and he said, "Hey guys, how do you feel about doing the Revealing Signs of God?" And I was just, my head exploded, because that's one of my favorite albums of all time, Topographic Oceans.
Yeah.
That's something I listened to when I was a teenager, and I listened to it every day, sometimes 2 times, 3 times a day. So I said, yeah, of course, let's do that one. I heard it a million times. I can probably just play it, like that, and but it was actually a bit of practicing. But and I think some of the other guys in Transatlantic, they hadn't even heard a song, So but anyway, we decided to do it, to at least try it, and and we did the actual rehearsing was actually on the boat, so we didn't rehearse anything. We didn't get together to
Wow.
rehearse before the boat, so we had just like a couple of hours on the boat to play together, and you and I, long distance run around, and revealing signs of God, and one more song I can't remember now. Starship Trooper.
Yeah.
So imagine that, 1.5 hours of Yes material you have to learn and play perfectly. I did practice for that one. So anyway, so we sort of connected there, and then I remember our record label guys were on the boat too, and they just said something to me, you should do an album with John. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. You'll do that any day, of course. That would be great, And then they sent me an email, say, how do you feel about doing that album with John? You're the guy. You're the right guy to do an album with him, to take him back to the Yes days, sort of. I said, yeah, sure. So the record label contacted him, and then I think John, the same day, maybe just a couple of hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours later, I had this email in my box. And I think the email had a note, and he said, here, let's make an album together, and here's a few song ideas. So he immediately from get-go, he just sent me song ideas, and see what you can make of this. And I took the songs and sort of mapped them out, and and put chords and keyboards and stuff like that on. It took a couple of months, but it turned out really well, and it was lots of fun to do.
It's a really underrated album. It's one of the best works in John Later's career and John solo career. It came a few months, I think, after another collaborative album he had done with Jean-Luc Ponty, which I love too.
Yeah, Jean-Luc Petit. Yeah, true. The violin player. Yeah.
Yeah. Still, finally, speaking of projects, I have to ask about one of my favorite ones. Another one for you, The Sea Within.
Yeah.
It's one of, if not the super, it's one of those, if not the super group that I most enjoyed in the recent years. It was really a terrific, amazing collaboration between you and the other guys, Marco Miniman, Daniel. And I love the debut from 2018. And you, Daniel, Tom, especially were absolutely in really high level there in songwriting and performance. But I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you think it's unlikely the band will continue because there's a lot of disagreement, disappointment from Daniel towards the album. Was that it? How was the situation?
It turned out a little bit strange, and I can't really tell the exact reason it turned out strange, because everything stemmed again from the record label saying to me that don't you want to start another band, like put together a super group, you can pick musicians, blah blah blah. So that was Inside Out that proposed to me to put together something. And then I talked to Jonas, the bass player in the Flower Kings at the time. And then he said, yeah, that's cool. And we were talking about musicians. And I said, I met Tom Brislin a couple of times in America because he was playing with, I can't remember now. He wasn't playing with Kansas, but he had been playing with Yes. So I heard him play with Yes. And we met him when Yes were somewhere in Germany. We were on tour with the Transatlantic, so we came backstage to talk with Chris and Alan, and Tom Brislin was there too. So we just briefly met him, So I know Tom, and I know of his abilities as a keyboard player because I've seen him play with Yes, So I said, I want Tom Brislin in the band, he's a terrific player, and we've been in contact, and we'd like to do something together. So we brought in Tom, and I also been in contact with Marco Minnemann a couple of times, you know, when we met in America too, at some festival, I can't remember. And I've been talking to Marco about doing something or playing on a record of mine or something. I can't remember now. But this was the time to put together a great band, you know. So thinking, okay, me, Jonas, Tom Brislin, Marco Minnemann. And I didn't want to sing because then it suddenly turned into too much Flower Kings. I said, we got to have another singer. And we were talking about it, and I think we both said, well, Daniel Gildenlöv is a terrific singer, you know. I really like his voice. And Jonas said, yeah, I can talk to him. So Jonas did talk to him. But what I didn't know was that Jonas probably gave the impression that it's not going to be something like the Flower Kings. It's not going to be progressive rock or something. So he had probably the impression it's going to be something else. So he was disappointed. Daniel was disappointed that I think he thought that the Sea Within, when hearing the songs, were too much Flower Kings, which I don't agree with, but that's his version of it, you know.
Oh.
So already when we were in London recording it, there was lots of discussions coming up, you know, and about making two different albums, and I realized I could see trouble coming, you know. And then we were about to release the album. There was lots of discussion in the mixing, and then there was Daniel almost didn't want to be part of the promotion. He didn't do anything. It's like almost like you say, no, I want no part with that album, you know. And when I realized that, I said, well, if we're gonna play this live, we can't have Daniel singing it. So we got to have someone else singing. And then we knew Casey McPherson, you know, we've heard it with other bands, and has a really nice voice. So I asked him if he wanted to sing a couple of songs without anything about future live shows or anything like that, you know. But he's a good singer. He can play some guitar. So he seemed like a perfect fit for the band, you know. So if I was thinking, okay, if Daniel sing half of the album and Casey sing the other half, then we can always go on playing shows, and then over time maybe change. So next album it will be Casey singing all the songs, and we be more like a unit where everyone is. But then it turned out Jonas took up on an offer from Steve Hackett to play bass with him. So he went away, you know, and suddenly the first shows we were playing with Petra Vavas from Marillion on bass instead. So everything was a mess, you know. And then we did 2 shows on the cruise, I think. Yeah, we did. That was the last thing we did, and we had a band meeting. But from that point, I think everything went in different directions, and Tom was joining Kansas, and which I understand because it's a great job, you know, and he fit in that, you know, in the context of what Kansas music is, and perfect fit for them, you know, and he can earn money. So I totally understand it. But everything comes to an end because everyone leave the band. So it's just me and Marco left, you know, and crazy.
The could be a collaborative album, Stolt Mineman.
Absolutely,
That's
anytime.
all.
Love Marco. I mean, he's one of my favorite drummers on the planet, actually.
Yeah.
And a wonderful guy, and I mean, so funny and so easy to work with. So and that's being around those kind of people, very uncomplicated people. That's what I love, you know. I don't like complications and sour grapes and, you know, people that are grumpy, or that's not what I signed up when I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to have fun, you know. And how can you have fun? You are together with fun people, and there are people like Marco Minnemann or John Anderson or those kind of people, you know. And the guys.
Yeah. He's for me the true song of Bill Bruford. His style of playing remembers for me Bill Bruford.
Yeah.
So talented, so part of the interview. I would like to ask about solos. Man, I have to say you for me is one of the most underrated guitar players ever, because you had a unique style. You had some textural thing. You had the technique. You had the motion. Everything merged together in a style of playing that I can really describe. But it's your style. It's only you that had this. Talk about solos, guitar solos.
Mhm.
Which ones do you most enjoy playing, especially live? Those solos that you started doing and think, oh, this solo, I was really happy. I was really fortunate to create and reproduce.
Uh, well, first off, I have to say, when people talk about guitar solos, in my world, a guitar solo is improvised, meaning it's different every time.
Yeah,
In the world of, let's say, metal or prog metal, the solos are usually not improvised. They're written solos. I mean, even people like, let's say, Steve Vai, who is a guy I really admire. Someone told me that, well, his solos, they are written solos, so it's like the same solo he play every night. It could be wrong, but I'm just trying to understand here the concept of guitar solos can be something different depending on what type of musician you are. If you go back to the days of the Allman Brothers, you have people like Duane Allman or Dickie Betts. They were playing guitar solos different every night. Jimi
yeah.
Hendrix never ever played the same guitar solo. And I'm more of a Jimi Hendrix guy, if you know what I'm saying. It's like I would be bored if I have to play the same guitar solo every night, because I want to explore new things. That's part of the fun being on stage, you
Yeah.
know. You get to the guitar solo, and if I mean, like now we're playing a song from Back in the World of Adventures. We've been playing lately live, and it has quite a long guitar solo, a big puzzle that we put in a longer guitar
My
solo.
favorite one.
Yeah, and that's where I can expand. The guys are taking it down. I can play soft notes. I can play loud notes. I can bend a little bit, and you know the keyboard player respond to what I'm playing, and that is musical heaven for me. But then I understand there are other types of guitar solos. So I'm definitely totally improvised guitar solo guy. I never play the same. So I'm probably more of a jazz musician or
No,
a
yeah.
blues.
Uh, I ask in the sense of what kind of improvisation you most like to do, because there even do you have changing every night. You have motifs, you have something that you maintain in some tours, some dynamics that you had, stuff like that.
I,
I
I,
ask
I,
in that sense.
I sometimes view it as a little bit of a conversation, just like you and I are talking now. You know, I talk a little bit and you talk a little bit. You know, I play a little bit, you know, and then I listen to the band, you know, and then maybe the drummer do a roll on the tom toms, and I may respond to his playing ba da do da do da da da. Then I may play da da ba ba da da da. I respond to what he's playing, you know. I listen to the vibe in the band, and you can follow or you can go against it. You can shock them with a sharp loud note, or you can take it down to really soft. And when you do that, I think the audience can feel that they're part of something unique, because if I would play the same solo every night, they heard it on the album. So now let's see if Roine can play his guitar solo correct tonight, you know. Now they're sitting there or standing there and they're watching something unique for where London or Paris, wherever we're playing, you know. Once in a lifetime, Roine played that solo and I was there. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I think
No, yeah.
all the great guitar players I'm listening to, it's like, that's the kind of guy I want to be, you know. I don't want to be a guy that just stand there, you know, playing the same standard, whatever they learned from the guitar book or from YouTube videos or something like that. that's boring to me. I want the other guys in the band to be a little bit like that also, not play the same thing every night. You got to follow a formula a little bit, but of course know the songs, but a little bit of freedom to improvise or put in a different thing. I mean, the piano player we have, he played different every night. He have some blocks of ideas that he toy around with and move around, but basically he's a fantastic improviser. So he could just stand there, improvise on piano, and it's just magic. And I wanna be in that magic. But when I play guitar, I want the audience to be in my magic, if you know what I mean.
I get that. And I really agree with that, because the surprising spark that you had on music, it's really great when you see a band live or an artist. When I mean, you changed the solos very much, some dynamics. You didn't rearrange the whole tune. I heard a interview some time ago by Roger Glover from Deep Purple,
Yeah.
and one journalist had asked him, "Man, you didn't get bored of playing Highway Star and Smoke on the Water every single night?" And he says, "No, when I create a technique when every time before and backstage, 10 or 15 minutes to show time, I thinking those songs that are most classic, predictable songs that we can't uh, let out in a set list, and try to think in the bass line in different parts of playing the bass line to make it more exciting, or even on stage, exactly when starting the song, I
Mhm.
start to relearn in a new way. I used to play with a pick, I play with the fingers, sometimes I use it a little bit of a slap, and
Mhm.
it really makes a room for making the things interesting. It's really cool like that, because not many artists, unfortunately, today use that, because all that we hear today is VS, playbacks and stuff like
Mhm.
that, MIDI
Yeah.
controllers. It
Yeah.
kills
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
music a little bit.
It does. I mean, I've been to a couple of shows lately where lots of the music was actually on tracks, and you have the musicians on stage miming, and you hear choirs, and you're looking at there's just two guys on the microphones. It sounds like it's eight guys, or you hear some strings and there's no one playing strings, or you hear percussion, there's no one on stage playing percussion. But that's been I could give you examples, but I shall not, because I don't want to embarrass people. But uh, yeah, I know of bands that do that kind of thing, and it's I think if it's live in my world, if it's live, it should be live. If you can't reproduce your album totally, fine, then play the song the way you can. I mean, even the Beatles back in the day, they stopped playing live because they made Sergeant Pepper or Revolver, and they couldn't repeat what they did on the album. But
Yeah.
I think it's sad. I want to hear. I mean, today Paul McCartney play songs. You have a little bit more keyboards and stuff like that and samples, but it's not like it's backing tracks. It's they play it actually. But back in the day, they couldn't really go on playing songs from Sergeant Pepper because it was so layered with different sounds and different keyboard sounds and extras and cembalos and whatever, percussion. So they couldn't play it live. But I think it really doesn't matter. You can play a song. A song is still a song, but it doesn't have to be exactly as on the album. I think as long as you
Wow.
have the singer there, you have the basics of the song. And I actually been to concerts where they scaled it down, and I enjoyed very, very much. It's not like on the album, but it's still a good song, and it's scaled down. It could be a piano player and a bass player, and that's it. And yes, and a singer, of course. Yeah.
You're definitely a prog guy. truly marked by it. I would like to ask, are there any bands or artists, new or old, that the people would never expect you to listen to or like, that you listen or like?
Oh my goodness. I can probably give you a handful or maybe two handfuls. I mean, I was, at least back in the day, I was a big fan of ABBA, the Swedish band ABBA.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That,
yeah. I love
think,
that. Love
uh,
them.
they're clever. It's popular music, but it's very clever and very unique, and with a bit of a Swedish touch, and the piano in the front and everything. So I like that, and I mean, nowadays I like Coldplay.
Oh really?
Yeah, I really do. There seem to be a beautiful band. I mean, beautiful set of guys, and I really like a couple of albums of Coldplay, and I listen to them a lot. And I also what's the other band? Muse, another British band. Seen them live once. They were great, and I like U2 very much, and I've seen them 2 times. Believe it or
By
not.
now?
I seen them. Well, I seen them once on my own in London, and then me and my wife, we were in London, and U2 were playing at the big arena there in I can't remember the dome. Anyway, so we went there to see them again. Yeah, I really like them, and what else? I like lots of progressive music, but mainly from back in the day, and of the newer bands, I'm not sure really. I don't see I don't really see the inventions that I could see in King Crimson or Frank Zappa or Yes, back in the day. They were so ahead of the time. And I mean, even the fusion bands like Chicory and Weather Report. I loved Weather Report. And what else in terms of music now? I have tickets to see Alison Moyet in a month from now. You
Oh
remember Alison Moyet?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I I I I I always like that. I don't know if you like those artists, but I sometimes compare your guitar sound, your guitar style to American jam bands, stuff like that, and
Yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
work by Fish or Empress McKee. I don't know if you know
Uh,
these bands.
yeah, I mean, I know of the bands. It's not like I listen to them regularly. The one band that I like is actually what's his name? Him and his wife, young guy with a ponytail.
Their trucks,
Derek Trucks. Yeah, that's the guy.
Tedeschi Trucks band. Love that.
Derek Trucks band. I love Derek Trucks. One of the greatest guitar players, living guitar players, I think. So classy, so melodical, so
Mhm.
unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're a great band. I love to see them live. I haven't seen them coming to Europe yet, but when they come, I will try to go see them.
Oh.
Definitely, definitely. But then of
True.
course, then I listen to some random pop songs and some random fusion bands, things like that. It's truth is I don't have that much time to go see bands or to check out what new albums that comes out. So
Yeah.
I just try if someone give me give me an advice, check out this band or check out this player, this drummer, this guitar player of the band. I go listen, and sometimes I like it, sometimes I'm not that impressed. It's from where I'm coming. I'm not anymore impressed by technical skills, if you know what I mean. So if I see
No.
a drum, yeah, just like playing like crazy on the drums, fast as hell, or a guitar player playing fast as hell, that may not impress me at all. Whereas if I hear Marco Miniman play drums, it's like a painting. It's like a Renaissance painting for me because he's so tasty. The sound of his drums, the way he plays, and with with the love he put into the playing, is like, that's great drumming, you know.
Tasteful instead of technical all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
To wrap up our interview, I always ask artists as a final question, if you
Mhm.
could define your music in one word or phrase, what would it be? But I always noticed, and you agree on that, because you see that as you see your musical pieces as a cinematic pieces, and I will change the question a little bit.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
could
yeah.
define your music as a movie, what movie would it be?
Oh my goodness, what kind of movie would? Oh my goodness. Uh, I frankly don't know.
What are your
Uh,
favorite movie?
we're probably nearing somewhere, you know, the lines of Lord of the Rings, you know, a cross between Lord of the Rings and, I don't know, some space odyssey. I don't know. Frankly,
The
don't know.
Lord of the Space Odyssey.
Yeah, yeah, probably something like that. And
Stanley.
a bit of Bonanza too.
Oh yeah, it would be a sort of Stanley Tolkien or Tolkien Kubrick.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Could be, could be.
Thank you very much, Roine.
Yeah,
Welcome you here. Hope that in the near future we can chat about the new upcoming album. I
sure.
promise that.
You can learn about the album, then we can talk about it when you heard the
Yeah,
album.
yeah,
If you think, yeah,
yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for availability, for
yeah,
your attention, for your patience, and for really, really kind responses and your goodwill. Thanks for
yeah. You're welcome.
everything.
Yeah. Have a
Bye
good day,
bye.
good night, or whatever. It's day, right?
May you had a great year, a great new record, a great touring, supporting new record.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sure it
All the
will be.
best for you.
It will be fun. I know it's gonna be fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.